This is a Pecha Kucha presentation on how and why culture matters for children's and adolescents' development and well-being. This presentation focuses on poverty, brain development, and the impacts on academic achievement and health. Culture is an umbrella term that encapsulates the values, beliefs, behaviors, and practices and material objects that contribute to a person's way of life. By nature, culture is social, collective, adaptive, and learned. It guides language, food, and the social norms that we follow. Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model encompasses the complex systems of relationships among the child's environment that influence development. Immediate relationships and activities, family, and interconnected of these relationships all provide to influence the child's development. Socioeconomic status determines how humans fare throughout life, including development, health, and well-being. Socioeconomic status may be defined as the intersecting measurement of education, occupation, and income, and used to identify the social standing of an individual group. Poverty refers to the lack of resources that are needed to sustain a minimum standard of living. When we think of poverty, it's important to recognize that it's not just financial resources, but also includes access to services such as education and healthcare. Poverty impacts health and education because it defines how many resources poor people have for basic needs. Research shows that children from lower socioeconomic status and poverty report greater exposure to stressful life events. They are at greater risk for experiencing negative emotions such as lower cognitive and social skills, as well as lower school performance, and they tend to display higher rates of chronic stress and anxiety. Poverty and stress disrupt the brain development by a buildup of cortisol in the brain. Large amounts of cortisol result in weaker neurological connections to the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, both associated with executive functioning skills such as learning, cognition, and working memory. When stress is chronic or reoccurring, these neurons shrink and impact a child's ability to make judgments, plan, and control impulsivity. One particularly study measured the salivary cortisol levels of children 6 to 16, both from low socioeconomic and high socioeconomic statuses, and determined that stress hormone levels were higher for younger children ages 6 to 10. The family stress model highlights how financial difficulties in the family generate stress that affects parenting practices. Economic pressure affects parental depression and other negative physical and mental health conditions, increased marital conflict, harsh practices in socialization, and child-rearing processes, eventually leading to the demonstration of more social, emotional, and behavioral problems in children. Poverty has often been discussed in correlation to academic performance and achievement in young children. Children in poverty often have less resources at home to complete homework, study, or engage in activities that help them prepare for school. These families lack the access to books, internet, and other materials that can support the student's outcome. Additionally, parents of these families are often working longer hours or multiple jobs, meaning they may not be available to assist their child in their academic needs. Children living in poverty are at a heightened risk of a number of health problems, including cardiovascular disease, immune system disorders, psychiatric illness. Specifically, research shows these children struggle with birth mortality rate, obesity, asthma, and emotional regulation. Pediatricians consider child poverty in the United States unacceptable, detrimental to health and well-being of children. Becker Elementary serves 441 students in Austin, Texas. 17.7% of the student population are considered economically disadvantaged. STAR testing is the state's testing program that is based on curriculum standards in the core subjects. There's an obvious notice that our students from underserved populations, such as economically disadvantaged students, are not obtaining mastery of these skills taught and assessed for the STAR test. Less than 1% of these students are meeting and or mastering these expectations of skills. Economically disadvantaged students at Becker Elementary were observed throughout the school day engaging in classroom instruction, independent reading, and playful interactions with peers during recess. During classroom instruction, students from economically disadvantaged populations were observed to struggle with attention and focus and frequently displayed off-task behaviors such as talking with peers, walking around the classroom, drawing, and even seemed to be zoning out. Teachers were able to redirect their focus with visual or verbal prompts, but students struggled to engage with the lesson. During independent reading, students were able to read library books or pick a book from the classroom library for 20 minutes. Students from disadvantaged populations in third grade were observed on 2 different occasions where they both chose picture book with little words and appeared to flip through the pages rather than reading the actual words. Lastly, children were observed playing soccer with grade level peers outside during recess. Although students from economically disadvantaged families were observed to be equally as active and social compared to their affluent peers, they were observed to struggle with emotional regulation when disagreements arose among the teams. Poverty is a result of the lack of financial and economic resources and services that affect the development and well-being of children.